Κυρία Χαλό, μετά το βιβλίο σας «Ούτε το όνομά μου», το οποίο έφερε ξανά στο προσκήνιο το θέμα της γενοκτονίας των Ποντίων, επιστρέφετε με ένα νέο βιβλίο με τίτλο «Γενοκτονία, ο θεμέλιος λίθος της σύγχρονης Τουρκίας». Θα ήθελα να μας πείτε δύο λόγια για αυτό το βιβλίο και ποιο είναι το μήνυμα το οποίο θέλετε να περάσετε μέσα από αυτό.
Well, this new book is really a history book. It's not a personal story like Not Even My Name. And I really try to give a full picture, as full as possible within the scope of the text of Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire rather, how it came to be, some of the wars before the Ottomans were established, and then of course the way they treated the inhabitants, mostly the Christian communities. So I bring it from the way back before the Ottomans and to the burning of Smyrna and the establishment of Turkey as a nation, as a modern nation.
Κυρία Χαλό, στο βιβλίο σας «Ούτε το όνομά μου» αφηγήσετε την αλυσμόνητη ιστορία της μητέρας σας, Σάνο. Σε ηλικία μόλις 10 ετών επιβίωσε από την πορεία θανάτου που αφάνισε την οικογένειά της. 70 χρόνια μετά τον εκπατρισμό της, η μητέρα σας, Σάνο, και εσείς επιστρέφετε στην Τουρκία σε μια προσπάθεια αναζήτησης του χωριού και του πατρικού της. Στο βιβλίο, μια Ελληνίδα Πόντια γεννήθηκε σε ένα μικρό χωριό κοντά στη Μαύρη Θάλασσα, αναπολύει την παραδοσιακή αγροτική ζωή της στα βουνά του Πόντου. Όταν βρεθήκατε στο χωριό Άγιος Αντώνιος, στα Κωτίωρα, στην Ορντού, τι αντικρίσατε, ποια ήταν τα πρώτα λόγια της μητέρας σας?
Well, of course, everything was gone. There's all of the houses were gone. I think they were afraid that people would come back and take them over again. And so one of the local women told me that they used the wood from the house because they were log cabins. They used the wood for the fire. But one of the most spectacular things, that we found, which there's no explanation for, that, one of the villagers brought us way up, which is far from the road where my grandparents' house used to be. And when my mother left, when they sent them on that terrible death march, she left her little calf that she loved tied to the apple tree. And when we went up there, without any reason, there was a little calf tied to the apple tree. There were no houses around. There was no reason for that little calf to be there. And so there was something almost mysterious and magical about that, as if he were waiting for her all of those years.
Όταν αποφασίσατε να καταγράψετε όλα όσα έζησε η μητέρα σας και οι προγονείς σας κατά τη διάρκεια του βίαιου ξεριζωμού, η μητέρα σας έπρεπε να βάλει στη σειρά τις ψηφίδες της ιστορίας. Θα θέλετε να μας περιγράψετε πώς η μητέρα σας σε μια τρυφερή ηλικία κατάφερε και σώθηκε, αλλά και πώς βρέθηκε στην Αμερική?
Well, when she, somehow they escaped from the Turks at a certain point in the south. But they had run out of money. It was difficult. They didn't have enough to buy food and things. And my grandmother then went out to beg so she can find some food for the family. And they came across a little tiny hamlet. And they knocked on one door. And the woman said, "Why don't you leave her with me? At least, she'll take care of it." And so my grandmother left my mother with this woman. And it was an Assyrian family. And, she treated my mother as like a slave. She took care of her children, but she was very mean to her, probably because she was jealous. My mother was very young and pretty, so I probably was afraid of her husband being attracted. And so finally my mother, when she found that the whole family, all of them were gone then, and then she finally ran away and went to Diyarbakir. And an Armenian family took her in because the woman was pregnant with her next child, and so my mother they took her in so she can help care for the new baby when she came. And that's how basically she survived. Then with that family, she learned to speak Arabic, which is what they actually speak in the South. And so when my father went to look for a wife, he spoke Arabic because he's Assyrian. And so they were able to communicate like that way together. And the Armenian family arranged for them to marry, and he brought her to America.
Πολλά χρόνια αργότερα, εσείς και η μητέρα σας έρχεστε στην Ελλάδα, στο χωριό Άγιος Αντώνιος, το οποίο είναι εδώ κοντά στην Θεσσαλονίκη. Για αυτό το χωριό μιλάμε.
I'm not sure. I think probably. I'm not sure. Yes. Yes, I think it is.
Σε αυτή την επίσκεψή σας, η μητέρα σας βρήκε συγγενείς, αναγνώρισε κάποιο μέλος ή κάποιον συγχωριανό, αναγνώρισε κάποιο μέλος της οικογένειάς της ή κάποιον συγχωριανό της?
No, not at all. Not at all. You know, one time we visited somebody, and there were two twin sisters, and for some reason they reminded me a little bit of my sister Helen. And I always wondered if we were related somehow. But there was no way of knowing that.
Ποιος ήταν ο αντίκτυπος του βιβλίου στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες και τι είναι αυτό που σηματοδοτεί ιστορικά για εκείνη την περίοδο?
Well, it was very, very well received. It got rave reviews, actually. And one of the things that they raved about it was that it wasn't hostile towards the Turks. You know, it wasn't. I didn't make everything, saying that they were terrible, but because actually, my mother said they got along very well with the Turks at the time. And in this new book, I talk about how the Young Turk government turned the people against the Christian neighbors with lies and with, they were mostly illiterates, and so they used made-up photographs or made-up pictures, to make events to show that the Greeks were being, killing women, and so it was very important to see how they manipulated the population. But my mother said they got along fine with the Turks when they were living there.
Σε αυτό το βιβλίο, στο καινούργιο σας βιβλίο, το οποίο παρουσιάζεται σήμερα στη Θεσσαλονίκη, τι είναι αυτό που θέλετε να πετύχετε και ποιο είναι το μήνυμα το οποίο θέλετε να περάσετε για τη γενοκτονία των Ποντίων, των Αρμενίων και των Ασσυρίων?
Well, as the title indicates, it was, the modern nation of Turkey is based on a genocide of the Christian populations there, and that includes the Greeks, the Armenians, and the Assyrians. And I think it's really important to know that because, for thousands of years of history, something like 4,000 years of history was erased within 11 years from these Christian populations. And so it was very, very dramatic.
Κυρία Χαλό, εσείς αισθάνεστε πόντια, αισθάνεστε αυτές τις ρίζες?
For so many years I didn't know what I was because my mother didn't know that word, Pontian. They didn't use that word. She knew Rum. She said the Turks called us Rum. And so we didn't know what Rum meant. We couldn't look it up. We weren't surrounded by Greeks. In New York City, our neighborhood was mostly Irish. And so we didn't know that. And my father, of course, people said, oh, the Assyrians don't exist anymore. You must mean you're Syrian. And so really we didn't have a nationality when we were younger. And so we made up one. We told people we were Egyptian because they were ancient and we thought, they were sort of interesting people. And it was only later when I took my mother back to Turkey or when I began to really listen to her story that I understood, who I was and where she came from.
Μιλάτε την ποντιακή διάλεκτο, προσπαθήσατε να την μάθετε?
No, because she didn't remember anymore. She hadn't spoken it since she was 10, and so she lost that language. And I'm aware that it's an ancient form of Greek actually.
Σε ένα από τα βίντεο, αναζητώντας περισσότερες πληροφορίες για την μητέρα σας, είδα ότι το μόνο που ήξερε να λέει στα ελληνικά είναι το πάτερ ημών και ομολογώ ότι ήταν μια πολύ έντονα συναισθηματική στιγμή όταν το είδα. Έτσι είναι?
Every night she said before she went to sleep, she said the pater imon every night, and that's how she remembered it.
Κυρία Καλό, ποιο είναι το δικό σας μήνυμα προς όλους τους λαούς που αυτή τη στιγμή βρίσκονται σε εμπόλεμη κατάσταση?
Oh dear, this business of humans killing other humans, it's so crazy. It's so fanatical and so crazy. What can you say about it except that it's obviously wrong and it's almost animalistic, Humans should have progressed further than that, that they don't have to go and kill each other. to have a message or to have land, etc. So I don't know more than that what to say about that.